I know we're still waiting on the county too, so another couple minutes and then we can get started. Hopefully Chris will join us. Okay. Yeah, and if for those of you that can see the chat, if you could list your name and who you're affiliated with, especially if you're affiliated with a municipality, that would be helpful for us to know. And I'll announce that again. If you're a member of the public, you can write that, or you don't have to type in at all. Myself in here. Great. What do we think? Mike, are you okay with me getting started? Do you want me to wait a couple more minutes?
I'm totally fine. I know you have some pre-slides to go through. So.
Yeah, we've got a good
recording in progress.
A good 15 minutes or so before we get to the presentation. All right.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks.
Yeah, and I'll make sure I make this announcement again. If you're able to kind of share with us in the chat your name and what either agency, organization, or municipality you're with, that would be great. Members of the public are welcome to do that too. You don't have to. Just helps us keep track of who we've got here and where they're from. All right, just a second. I'm going to turn off this initial slide and I'll come back to it. Just want to introduce myself. My name is Danielle Kroll. I'm a transportation planner here with the SMTC. And this is one of our forum on active transportation meetings. We hold these 3 to 4 times a year. Have a lot of focus on bicycle and pedestrian type projects. It just gives us an opportunity to share what we're working on in the community and what our member agencies are working on in the community. Let's see, we got a few more folks coming in. So again, if you're just joining us, if you could take a second to note in the chat, if you can share your name. I know we can see them on the screen, but if you can share your name and if you're affiliated with a town, a village, an agency, if you're a member of the public, you can let us know that too. You also don't have to if you're not comfortable with doing so. Okay, and also just a reminder, this meeting's being recorded and it's also being shown live on our YouTube stream. However, anyone that's watching from YouTube won't be able to kind of interact with us live this way, but you can certainly listen that way. All right, I'm going to get back to sharing my screen so we can get moving through our little presentation. Okay, and if that looks good, we'll get moving here. Again, I'm Danielle Kroll with SMTC. We've got a few of our staff on here with us today, helping run the meeting. I've got Tom Barnett, he's a senior transportation planner. Mike Alexander, he's a senior transportation planner. He's going to be chatting later, sharing a presentation. Andrew Frazier is our senior transportation analyst. He's running YouTube for us. Who else am I missing here? Mario, I saw your name. Mario Clone is our program manager. Kevin Kozkowski is another one of our transportation planners. And if I missed anyone else from our staff, I apologize. Got this kind of in a weird. Okay, there we go. All right. I just want to very briefly go over our meeting expectations. Essentially, we're just asking everyone to please be respectful of one another. Totally fine to express disagreement. Let's just refrain from, being not so kind. So just we can focus on that. We shouldn't have a problem. We never have. It's another, we've got everyone muted on as they come into the meeting. It also keeps us from kind of speaking over one another. We'll certainly give people plenty of opportunity to chat and chime in later. So one of the first things I want to do is share some SMTC staff updates for those of you that are new to these meetings. What we do is share the work that SMTC has been doing. I'll try to be pretty brief because we have a full agenda today, and I want to make sure we give Mike enough time to talk about one of our exciting projects that we have going on. Let me catch up here to where I'm at. So we've got 3 recently completed projects or projects that will be wrapping up very soon, listed on the screen. And the first 2, the North Syracuse project and the Safe Routes to School for Onondaga County, those are on our SMTC website. So if you'd like to take a look at where those, if you'd like to take a look at the final product for those, you certainly can. We're also nearing the end of our Route 57 complete street study, and that will be on our website once that is completed and taken through our SMTC committee process. As far as what's going on with some of our other projects that we've been working on, and these are projects related to bicycle and pedestrian activity in some sort of function or manner. These are not all of the projects that SMTC works on. So these are primarily related to bike and ped, which is why we're sharing them here at our FOAT meeting. So for community streets, and I apologize, I didn't update any pictures on the slide. I know Tom would be able to share some at some point, but we have worked on an installation over the summer for Syracuse Urban Collective's project, where we painted bump outs and completed a bike corral, and that bike corral will be available until the end of October. With our Reconnecting Communities pilot program, we've got 2 demonstration projects that were installed over the summer, a chicane with painted bump outs and a mural. The consultant team developed initial cross-section designs for study corridors, and they're continuing to work on full design for that project, and we're looking at a November public meeting. For our Thriving Communities program, our staff here participated in in-person site visit with the consultant team. We were able to take a VO scooter tour of the study neighborhood, and the consultant team also met with community stakeholders and city officials. And we've got transit-oriented development opportunities near 4 proposed BRT station locations as part of that project. I have to move some of this stuff that's popping up here so I can see what's on my screen. We have some new projects that recently came online. Several of these projects, we scoped these over the summer. They're all pretty much in the beginning phases. So most of these projects you'll see are currently in our existing conditions collection and analysis phase. And some of that includes going out into the field and collecting data. Some of it's looking up projects that may have already been done nearby. We don't want to replicate anything that's already been completed. So we're pretty much in those phases of collecting data for all 4 of these projects. With our Bear Trap Creek Connector project, again, we've collected and analyzed data, but we're also starting with that one to work on some initial issue and opportunities. And we've started reaching out to some stakeholders for that project. Nottingham Road Multimodal and Cicero Active Transportation Plan, we're just starting to gather some existing conditions data, have some field work coming up for that. And for our Midler Ave and Newcourt Ave multimodal study, along with the data collection and analyzing, we've got an online public survey that we expect to be released in mid-October. We're looking to understand how folks are using the corridor and help identify issues and opportunities along that route. We've got 2 other new projects, the Bike Commuter Corridor Implementation Project, which Mike Alexander from our office will be talking about a little bit further on into the meeting today. And then we also have the Empire State Trail Economic Opportunities Phase 2 project. And I'm going to stop sharing here because I know Andrew was going to he wanted the floor for a few minutes so that we could hear more about that project. So Andrew, can ask you to unmute, and you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Perfect. Thanks, Danielle. Yeah, no, I just wanted to take a quick opportunity as we're here. I know we have a lot of municipal folks on the call today. Back in 2022, the SMTC did phase 1 of our Empire State Trail Local Economic Opportunities Plan. I will post the link to that in the chat. It's also available on our website. And so for this upcoming year, we're going to be working on phase 2 of that. And really what that is, the phase 1 of the plan took kind of a very high level analysis of several different corridors across the Empire State Trail in Onondaga County. For phase 2, we're hoping to really lock in on a smaller number of those corridors, but do a more complete analysis and some preliminary cost estimates and maybe some visualizations as well. What some of those connections to the Empire State Trail could look like for local towns and villages. So as we get going with that, that should really be ramping up in the next few months or so. We're really looking to partner with really interested municipalities that really want to move this forward. And so I'm going to post another link in the chat that's kind of just like a request for information. So if you are here representing a municipality and you want to learn more and be included, kind of in all of our communications, you can fill that out and that will go directly to me. We're also going to be mailing things out as well in the coming month or so. So, your offices will receive that communication. But I wanted to get a jump start on that if there's anybody here that really was, looking to make sure they're involved. So real quick update. A lot of this ties into with what Mike's going to talk about with the bicycle commuter corridor study. So I felt like it was a really good just kind of point to mention it, and really looking forward to getting that project off the ground in the next couple months. So thanks, Danielle.
All right, sure thing. Great. Thanks, Andrew. Just again, for anyone that maybe has just joined, if you want to share your name in our meeting chat, your name and your affiliation, whether you're with an agency or a town or village, or a member of the public, feel free to let us know who you are and where you're from. I'm going to go back real quick to sharing my screen here. Let's see. I think. Let's see. Oh, of course, I went all the way back to the beginning. Apologize for that. So now, what we usually like to do is have our member agencies give us an update on different projects that they may have been working on, either in the past or they plan to work on in the future, if they want to share any updates with us. And we like to just go through and ask them to share anything new with us. So let's see, I saw Julie on, so I'm going to ask Julie Baldwin. She's a senior transportation analyst, with New York State DOT. Just a second, Julie, I have to ask you to, oh, you are unmuted. Okay.
I got it.
Perfect, yeah, thanks.
Sure. So we actually have some stuff we've been doing this year. I think we haven't met since January. So this summer there was the big statewide Erie Canal bike tour. So we kind of pushed our contractor for a section of that was on the 81 contract on Water Street. We pushed them along so that would be open for the ride, so that we were successful on that.
Awesome.
We have 3 other projects that are construction this year that I was going to mention. First is the Village of Liverpool on Route 370. That's a 2-year job, so they started work this year and they'll also be working next year. That's going to reconstruct the road, but it's also rehabbing about 2 miles of sidewalks and curb ramps and things like that. There will be 2 new RFBs in that project. That's the high pedestrian beacon where you press the button and it will flash when a pedestrian wants to cross the roadway. Let's see. So the next project I was going to talk about is the Route 31 paving and intersection improvement project out in Cicero. We are, doing 2 roundabouts, which is the big part of the project with paving, but we're also adding sidewalks in that area. I think there's another RFB in that one. So those will be some improvements and hopefully better to navigate out there for folks. And then at Route 11 over Oneida River Bridge, we were able to work with the town of Cicero to put a trail, multi-use path, 10-foot wide, underneath the bridge abutment on the south side, so that park could connect over to the east side underneath the bridge. So those are the ones I wanted to highlight. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Julie. Really appreciate that. Those are some exciting projects coming down. All right, let's see. I saw, not to pick on anyone, but Bren, I saw you. She's the Associate Vice President of Communications and Business Planning with Centro. So go ahead.
Hi there.
Hi.
Danielle, you mentioned a couple of projects that we are working on with SMTC, so glad to hear you highlight those at the beginning of the call. I also just really wanted to talk to you guys about our Better Bus Onondaga system redesign. So we are in the middle of a bunch of changes that we would like to make in January of 2027. So now is the time for you to go to our website and look at the proposed changes and give us feedback. This is our public outreach number 2, phase 2. We actually had last week, we had 21 different events. So if you did not get out to see us when we were out and about last week, definitely get on our website. And there's, if you go to centro.org/Better Bus Onondaga, there is a ton of information about what we are planning. And basically, we haven't redone our system. We haven't looked at a comprehensive system overhaul in quite a while, many, many years. So we really wanted to make some changes to get ready for our bus rapid transit, which will be happening in 2028. And make the entire system make sense. One of the things that we've been hearing from the public was we would be willing to walk further for more frequency. So we increased in a good majority of our areas. We are proposing that. One of the things we heard was that schedules are confusing. And I'll be honest, our system is a little confusing in that sometimes this route does this and sometimes it goes off and does this deviation and sometimes it does this deviation. And so we've tried to clean that up with our new proposal, that it's more straightforward, it's less deviations and just easier to understand. And so those are some of the main things that we had heard in our first round of public outreach, and then our outreach that we did with SMTC in 2023. So we've made the proposal anyway. I'll put it in the website. Oh, you did, Tom. Thank you so much. The link is there. It is also centro.org/Better Bus Onondaga, and we want your feedback. This is the time for us to take your feedback and go back to the drawing board a bit. And I expect us to make, between 10 and 20% changes based on the feedback that we are getting right now. So check it out. It's great for the pedestrians. It's great for the transit riders, and lots of really good things in this system redesign. So go look at it and tell us what you think. Thank you. Yes, and Kayla.
Oh yeah, go right ahead. Sorry.
Option for feedback. There is a ton of information again on the website, and then you can go into I think it says either get involved or give us your feedback, and you can actually comment on each individual route that you're looking at and tell us what you like or don't like about the system as a whole or each individual route. So lots of options for public feedback. You can always also email us at betterbus@centro.org, and that's a good way to give us feedback as well.
All right, great. Thank you, Bren. Perfect. All right, let's see. I've also got Kara Verbanik with the Onondaga County Health Department. She's the program coordinator of creating healthy schools and communities. Kara, are you, let's see, I'm going to ask you to mute. Are you right there? Oh,
I'm here.
Okay, great.
Did that work? I had to hit unmute on my side. So
yes, I can hear you. Thanks.
Yeah. I just wanted to update everybody. I know everyone knows Adriana Savage. She was doing the activity friendly route work on our grant. She went out on maternity leave and has decided to stay home with her family longer. So as of right now, she will not be returning to the county health department. And Alexis Quinn is on this call. She's going to be working on the activity friendly route work. But we kind of had a halt over the summer, not a halt, but we were waiting for Adriana to come back because she had some projects in mind. But we continued to do work with the regional market. They got their bike racks installed. We got them some ADA signage. They striped more of the crosswalks. We got them additional pedestrian signage there. And then we have just connected with Ed Smith School again. They were doing the bike
Oh, yeah.
bus at the end of last school year and they started it back up. So we wanted to work with them to see if we can do like a walk to school day or a bike or walk to school day with them. So we're hoping to connect to do that work.
That's awesome. Wonderful.
Yes.
All right, thanks. Actually, while you just mentioned that, I want to make sure before I forget, I'm going to type this into the chat
Okay.
if I can here. But Tom reminded me that this week is, let me make sure I get it right. So there's all these different Week Without Driving Week, National Week Without Driving Week. So it's weekwithoutdriving.org, just for your sake and for everyone on the call here.
Yeah.
It's a good spot to mention it, weekwithoutdriving.org. That's this week. So folks, if you want to check that out, you can. I haven't had much of a chance to take a very close look at it. But there we go. All right. Thanks very much,
Thank
Kara.
you.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
All right. Let's see. Got next here. I don't think Neil, I know Kevin from the city is not on. I know he wasn't going to make it. And it doesn't look like Neil is here from the city today. So we won't be hearing from Department of Public Works. And I was hoping for Chris Rober, but I don't see him yet, but hopefully he will join us in a little bit. We can get him on soon. Otherwise, we usually go through, we've got a number of member agencies and we go through and ask for updates. So I think what we'll do at this point is we will move on to our presenter today. We're going to do kind of what we've been doing all along. We're going to have Mike give his presentation, hold your questions to the end, but if you're worried you might forget your question or you just want to get it out there, please feel free to type that into the chat and we'll get back to it. And then once Mike is done, we'll take questions from anybody on anything, and you can either physically raise your hand or you can use your raise your hand button at the bottom of the screen here. But for now, let's see, Mike is going to chat with us about our 2013 Bike Commuter Corridor Study. And so Mike, whenever you are ready to go, you can go right ahead and get started.
Thanks, Danielle. Can you guys see the presentation? Hopefully you're seeing the presentation slides. Right?
Yep.
Great. Okay. First of all, I just want to take a moment and thank everybody, especially our municipal partners who are taking the time to be with us here today. It's a good opportunity for us to take a look at a past effort that we've done. It's actually been 12 years now since we've done this effort. So I've got the original hard copy right here in front of me, and I was having some fun dusting it off and taking a look at it. And basically, the idea behind this effort we're going to get into within the following slides. But back in 2013, the state had asked us to identify a bike commuter corridor network. And, so we did that at the state's behalf. As part of this effort, it became a multi-jurisdictional network. So you have state roads, county roads, city roads, town, village roads, and so forth affected. So we're going to kind of refresh everybody's memory about what this study was and what this study is not, what it's trying to accomplish, what it's not trying to accomplish. So that's a big effort for today. It also gives everybody the opportunity to understand what roads were selected and what types of treatments were suggested for these roadways, how your particular community may fit into this entire network. And certainly this is the first of a few discussions we hope to have on this project. So given that this is a recorded presentation, it will be on our YouTube page and it'll be available for folks to be able to review and have an understanding of what the intent of the 2013 study is. In going through this study again, we feel that most of it is still relevant. There's obviously been some changes since 2013 to roadways, to bikeways. We talked about the Erie Empire State Trail system and so forth. Some of the lake has been extended. So there's been some changes since then. So there'll be perhaps some need for us to take a quick look at changes here and there, but by and large, we still feel that the vast majority of the principles identified within the study are relevant. So with that said, although back in 2013, the state asked us to prepare this study, fast forward to today, looking at what has been built out since then, we know that a lot of the city road network identified within the plan has been built out. And the city had about 10, maybe 15% of the identified network. But when you look beyond the city, there's still plenty of opportunity to make bike improvements out there. And there was an implementation plan as part of this study, and I'll talk about that a little bit when I get into the slides. But since so much of the study still has opportunities for being improved and incorporated and implemented moving forward, the county, in particular, the county planning department, has asked us to find ways to more or less help come up with a more detailed implementation plan that goes above and beyond the strategies put forth back in 2013. So that's what this process will include over the next several months. We'll probably have a couple meetings here talking on different elements of this effort. And with that, I'll just kind of go through some of these slides to give everybody a chance to refresh their memories of what this plan is. So again, feel free to put any questions as I go through in the chat. I'll try my best to kind of keep up on that and answer them on the fly if I can. But as a quick overview, I'm going to review the background information. We'll talk about the study's purpose. We're going to talk about the target group for this study. It's a very specific target group. What the process was that we went through to identify the various corridors and the various facility treatments that we're recommending, and of course some of the recommendations at the higher level. So I'm just going to move something off my screen so I can read this better. Okay. All right. So as far as the background, as mentioned, it was done by us in 2013, requested by the state. Multi-jurisdictional, 100-mile network, 77 roads, 15 different road owners. You can see 6 villages, 6 towns, city, county, and state as the primary road owners. There are also some private property elements and private road owners that were identified in the plan. So you might be able to pick up on that when you start looking at some of the maps I'll show on later, but that's just a very, very small percentage. Back in 2013, the overall implementation strategy is called the 3R process. It's basically whenever a municipality who owns a road, or the county or the city, the idea would be when they get around to resurfacing, repaving, restoring the road itself, that would be the time to incorporate the changes suggested into that process. So it'd be done over time. It would be not a project that was necessarily proposed all at once just to be built out across the entire Syracuse region, but just kind of piecemeal as funds are available and as communities and road owners have the ability to incorporate them. That was kind of the approach. And as I said, we're estimating 10 to 15% of the entire network has been built out primarily within the city of Syracuse. The purpose of the study was to focus on identifying a bike network that is focused on commuters. Commuters, of course, are those who want to travel from home to work on their bike. So basically, we're trying to lead bicyclists to their jobs. What this ended up doing is we had suburban to suburban connections, but we also had suburban to urban connections within our process. So the two big major employment centers are downtown Syracuse, of course, and University Hill. So the target group for this effort were what are referred to as experienced competent riders. This is actually an AASHTO definition. Essentially, it's riders that are comfortable riding on streets up to 25 miles per hour. So certainly at speed, up to 45 miles per hour going down steep slopes, in distances 5 or more miles. So when you look at the network and you measure out from like the urban core, the city of Syracuse, and you extend out, we go out approximately 7 miles. And just to kind of give you a sense of that, if you're riding your bike at about 30 miles per hour, that 7 miles limit, given all of the factors that you have to take into account as you travel through these corridors, gets you a cycling time of about 45 minutes, which we feel that would be a reasonable time for somebody to cycle from 7 miles out. With the idea that it would be about an hour total commute, you would get, cycle for the up to 45 minutes if you're on the far outer end, and give you about 15 minutes to come in, hopefully get cleaned up, lock up your bike, that type of stuff. So for overall hour commute, and there's many cyclists over time that we've talked to who've indicated that they're willing to bicycle up to an hour to get to work each day, if they're farther out. So I just want to kind of give you a sense of what that means. And the overall takeaway too is, because these are experienced, confident riders, the key is we have to identify corridors that are going to allow people to maintain high average cycling speeds. That way they can travel those distances over that time. So just to be clear then, these roads, if a bike lane is proposed or a share is proposed, those bike lanes and shares can be used by anyone. But the idea is we've specifically identified these roads for this level of ridership. So this isn't like a bike network that is like a trail network or something that's where we would necessarily be marketing it towards like children using the lanes. But there's certainly roads within this identified network that would be certainly appropriate for it, but that's not the target audience. Obviously, it's a very specific target audience. So I just want to take some time to emphasize that about what this is, because we do hear a lot of feedback through all of our survey processes throughout the years about the types of bike facilities that people want. And of course, people want separated bike lanes. They want to be removed from the road whenever possible. But something like this as a commuter corridor study, this is targeting those types of individuals who are very comfortable cycling with traffic at speeds. So moving on from here, the 2013 study process, what we did was, just like with any of our planning processes, we reviewed all the existing plans that existed at the time. We did a detailed existing conditions assessment. We worked with our travel demand model, and I'll have a slide on that to explain what that is and how that theme is and input into the process. Anytime we do a study, we work with the study advisory committee, and we have multiple meetings throughout. They help steer the course of things. We also had workshops with experienced cyclists that provided a ton of information, ton of feedback, and helped us, work through some of the thoughts that we had on corridor selection and so forth. Plus, staff also did site visits along all of these corridors and noted observations, concerns, the types of things that, would be challenging, and all that's documented within the report itself. So again, going back to 2013, it's like we've got a time machine here. So there's fewer plans that were dedicated to biking and walking back in that era. Biking and walking were starting to get talked about more and more. So at that time, there was a Syracuse bicycle plan. The city was also in the process of updating its bike master plan as part of its comprehensive plan element. So that process occurred, that update occurred at the same time as our process. So we worked closely with the city to coordinate with its planner at the time who was leading it to make sure that all the information jived, that the corridors that we identified for the bike commuter corridors were also incorporated into the city's planning effort. And the city, of course, looking at more roads for other reasons beyond what we were trying to accomplish, but we made sure that everything, fit hand in glove with that effort. The Erie Canal Way Trail Study, the Connected Corridor effort, Onondaga Creek Walk, those were kind of like the hot items back then. So, we always, when we look at major roadways, we always want to know where the businesses are when it comes to bike lanes and so forth. This map here is just kind of a high level map, shows, a dot density map of where businesses exist along corridors, gives us a sense of where the commercial corridors exist. There's pros and cons of putting bike lanes in business quarters like this. The pros are you're linking the bikes right straight to those businesses. The cons are there's tend to be a lot of driveways, a lot of curb cuts, and what that equates to is a lot of conflict points, and there's safety elements that we have to be mindful of whenever you select commercial corridors. So this was one input of many inputs that went into the equation, but just to kind of give you a sense of how the corridors look when it comes from a commercial standpoint, this is, quick takeaway. I mentioned before about our travel demand model. We have a very detailed, high-level regional travel demand model within our planning area that's calibrated. So what we used our travel demand model for at that point was to find out where the origins and destinations are. What you see in this image here, just at a high level, you see the darker greens. The darker it is the green, the more of an origin point it is for people who are traveling to work. It tends to be more residential neighborhoods, fewer businesses or commercial within these areas. And again, the darker the green, the more concentration of people commuting. The blues, the lighter blues, darker blues show where the vast majority of the businesses are, where people are trying to get to. And these desire lines are indicated, they're weighted on, thickness as far as the types of demand there is between particular origins and destinations. So what you see here is clusters, we call them TAZs. We've got clusters of TAZs that we've identified. And you can see the desire lines. In some cases, it's between suburban area to suburban area. And in some cases, it's urban area to suburban area. And again, this is what the model suggests as where you would get the biggest bang for your buck trying to develop a bike commuter corridor network. These are the types of areas we're trying to link together. So out of this, when you overlay the road network behind it, the major connector corridors and so forth, you're able to identify, all right, so what major corridors connect all these areas together and so forth. So based on that, we're able to identify, as shown in this map, some high-level initial thoughts of corridors to consider. So the dark corridors in this map were based on, the feedback from the travel demand model. The model, again, doesn't identify these corridors. We just use the model to help inform us on the decision of what corridors make sense to link things together from suburban to suburban, and suburban to rural, suburban to urban. So as you can see, we shared this information with our study advisory committee. The committee actually had some strong feelings about, at the beginning of the study, let's include some additional roads. So the lighter colored roads that are highlighted were additional roads that the study advisory committee members asked us to consider and study further. So that we've incorporated them in some of the SAC feedback and so forth. And we had multiple meetings throughout the course of the project to work with the study advisory committee to get their feedback out. Transit service. There's nothing confusing at all about this, Bren. I'll just say that this is something that we also considered. We want to know where the buses are. The buses have the ability to incorporate, to have bicycles put on the front of the bus. And so that could help extend commute out further beyond what is able to be, achieved by just riding a bike alone. I mean, I live out in Marcellus, and I would take the bus in from Marcellus, and there was a guy that came in from Auburn, Skinny Atlas area on the same bus, and he always had his bike on the bus. And he commuted in from that far, rode the bus into the city, and then took off from there on his bike. So we wanted to know where the active bus routes were, as well as the park and ride locations for obvious reasons. So we looked at this. This is just high level snapshot map of what the bus service looked like back in 2013. And I know it's getting better and better all the time. We also looked at bike suitability. And so this is a map. This is based on an effort that was done by SMTC, let's just say pre-pandemic. What happened was that we actually had, and Danielle, feel free to chime in and correct me. I know you were more involved with this effort in the past. We had cyclists go out, ride corridors, or at least examine corridors, and rate what they felt was the level of suitability based on what the corridors were. Doesn't mean that these are where bike lanes are. Doesn't mean it's just based on the existing road how comfortable and how reasonable is it to consider utilizing this route to travel. So back in 2013, this was certainly more up to date at that point. It considers, as you can see, accident locations and so forth that might be applicable to bike head collisions. And this was another data input into the process for suitability. Certainly consider stuff like posted speed limits, the ADT, so the annual average daily traffic for various roads. We considered that. Here's just a quick data dump of what that looks like that we considered it. Obviously, the faster the posted speed limit, the faster you would anticipate vehicles traveling along these roads. Higher speeds tend to be more problematic for cyclists. Higher traffic volumes, same thing. So that was another input into the process for the decision making. We also maintain a detailed pavement conditions database. We constantly rate pavement conditions throughout the entire network. We know where the good smooth roads are. We know where the bumpy and not so smooth roads are. This is kind of interesting as an input because there's pros and cons. When it's a bumpy road, it might not be a low-hanging fruit for riding your bike on it, so to speak, right now. But as far as the fact that it may need to be paved at some point in the future, it could be viewed as an opportunity. You know, it might not be good for cycling now, but when they go to repave it, this could be a perfect opportunity for them to repave it, maybe incorporate some of those suggested bike treatments that we had. So we viewed this as kind of a double-edged sword. But again, we considered pavement condition ratings back in 2013 at that time. We also considered slope. You know, the further north of the city you go, it tends to flatten out, less of steep slopes for riding bikes. But as you go south of the city, you know, the city of Syracuse is full of drumlins, Camillus, DeWitt, and so on. So taking into consideration where steep slopes are along some of these roads is a major factor. So you can see we considered slopes. This map just happens to show greater than 5% slopes, but we considered thresholds higher than that in different ranges. But just kind of give you an idea where the steep slopes are and the factors that went into those decisions. I mentioned we worked with cyclists out in the community. So we had several meetings with various experienced, confident riders, especially folks who are interested in commuting. So we shared the various routes that we were considering at that point in the process where we were, and we received a ton of feedback. Again, documented all this in the plan. Gave us a lot of great insights to help further refine things, figure out where some concerns are, where some pinch points are, and so on. And then staff went out, we did site visits. So we traveled all the various corridor routes. Most of it was windshield surveys. Sometimes we got out and took some measurements here and there and verified things. But we were most interested in finding out which roadways have what appear to be like perhaps very wide shoulders, something that maybe in the future, given how wide the overall pavement width, maybe those shoulders could be converted into bike lanes at some point in the future. And so those are the types of things that we were primarily most interested in. But as you can see, we detailed all sorts of information based on site observations. And we did this for every single road that was within the network that we were considering at that point in the process. I'm only showing, comments from the west here, but we had the same level of detail for the overall network. And again, it's helping us winnow down which quarters to select. So, just as a quick snapshot of a summary table, when you look at what would be the major corridors like the Milton Ave, the Hallett Hills, the West Genesee Streets, Route 370, and so forth, when you look at those various major corridors, and of course, there's many offshoots here and there, but these are the major, longer portions of the network. We wanted to rank things just give us a quick snapshot of how things were looking. It's like whether it was a positive attribute, negative attribute, or a neutral attribute. So if it's positive, it's a plus. If it's negative, it's a minus. If it was neutral, it's an N. As you can see, just looking down Milton Ave, there's a lot of pluses, a lot of positive attributes for each of these factors. So over on the right-hand side, you can see the various definitions of what the positive is. So like, looking at transit service, for instance. So if there was bus service along that route, it was a positive. If there's limited bus service, maybe here and there along the route, those neutral. If there's no bus service, we consider that a negative. Again, some of this is just subjective. Some of it's more quantitative. Speed, posted speed limits, traffic volumes, and so forth. Certain topography. You can see all the various factors that went into this. So after going through that entire process and hearing all the feedback from study advisory committee members, various workshop sessions that we had with the cyclists and all the other roadway features, we suggested the following, roads that are shown here on this map. So you can see primarily going out to the west, the northwest, the north, and into the east. Population drops off dramatically, within the city. To the south, there's not much population to the south, so there was not a need to go down there for obvious reasons. Within the city itself, I mentioned before, the city at that time was doing its own bike master plan, which was planning for bikeways all throughout the city. So again, these were the major commute corridors for cyclists for high speeds that were prioritized within that network. And then the city also considered some of its own commute corridors for other areas as well. So again, things fit pretty hand in glove. What I want to point out here, it's not shown by roadway, but what you do by road owner, I should say. But what you do see here are essentially two primary treatment types. So we're talking bike lanes and we're talking sharrows. So I'm sure everybody's familiar with what a bike lane is. I'm sure everybody is for a sharrow, but sharrow, just in short, it's a shared lane marking. It's where you have a stencil in the road that basically it's not a designated bike lane, but it just communicates to drivers that cyclists will be traveling within the same driving lane as you. So really, we feel that this is I don't want to say an inexpensive venture, but it's a pretty basic venture for bike lanes and sharrows. We're not talking extensive, reconsidering trails or shared use paths or any of that. The vast majority of it is just bike lanes and sharrows. So basically, the idea, again, understanding that there isn't one proposal to implement this all at once to build bike lanes everywhere, because again, if there were wide shoulders, it might be a good candidate for bike lanes. But what's important for some folks to realize when we were going through this process was that the way a shoulder is designed is different than the way a bike lane is designed. So in the short term, we're saying, yep, use those shoulders as the bike lane, but as you go to repave, re-engineer it, repave it at the proper angles, because the shoulder is steeper, for instance, a bike lane is less steep. And so on. So just a quick illustration of that. So in the short term, the idea would be, hopefully go out and sign these corridors as bike routes for connecting point A to point B. Get whether it's share the road signs. If you can go out there and stencil in some sharrows, great. If it's bike lanes, maybe just sign it as a route or bike, incorporate it as bike lane if it's appropriate to do so. And then as time goes on, if there's a need to repave or redesign, then incorporate it as an official bike lane at that point. You will see, I'll point out, there's some yellow highlighted areas. Those are existing trails as of 2013. So we tied into existing trails whenever we could. We do have a couple cycle tracks and bike boulevards proposed as part of this. In particular, where Route 92 out towards Fayetteville, Manlius area is going underneath 481. Everybody knows what that intersection looks like now. That's what it looked like back in 2013. But of course, with the Route 81 project, there's new designs going in for that portion of Route 92 and so on. So, but the idea back then was, do a cycle track, and we had some suggestions on what that would look like and so on. So moving on from here. That was a high level, just kind of giving you an overview of what the overall network looked like, all working nicely together. We drill down further within the report. We show coming from the west, communities of Geddes, town of Geddes, town of Geddes, village of Camillus, town of Camillus, going out towards Marcellus, what roads were selected. Again, blue being suggestions for bike lanes, tend to be more wide shoulders along those roads. Green being, utilize it as a share-o. If there's ever an opportunity in the future to incorporate bike lanes or redesign it, great. So these are the roadways identified from, the western communities. I did include a link for those municipal officials that haven't seen this plan. I did include a link to this study in the chat. So you can certainly click on that link and scroll and look at this in more detail, something to read about some of the recommendations for areas that might be affecting your community. Looking from the northwest, you got primarily, Route 370, Morgan Road, Buckley Road are the main ones. Basically, what you're seeing here are, by and large, bike lanes are suggested. These are county route facilities. County does a beautiful job of having very nice roadways, very nice shoulders, a lot of space, usually wide shoulders. So we feel that these are, a lot of these roadways are good candidates for maybe at some point considering them as bike lanes. Anything that you see that's circled, those are essentially just intersections that could be challenging. Given that this is a high-level 100-mile corridor study, we didn't drill down into specifics of every single intersection, but what we wanted to do is we wanted to circle which ones we felt would require some additional attention when the design process came. That way, it's something that can be pointed out at a pretty high level. So moving on from there. Again, you can still see Buckley Road. So we're looking at the northwest. Now we're kind of looking at the northeast. So you got Buckley Road, you got the South Bay Road going through North Syracuse all the way up to Cicero. Cognoy Road is the main ones, tying in with the Bear Trap Creek Trail. And there's a lot of studies underway. Well, currently there's a study underway that SMTC is doing for the Bear Trap Creek Trail. But in the past, we've done the Mattydale Route 11 corridor study, which had some detailed recommendations for the Bear Trap Creek Trail. The SMTC, it's the Regional Transportation Center Mobility Plan, which is where the Creek Trail also kind of, I said Creek Trail, where the Bear Trap Creek Trail also connects into. They had some recommendations for that trailway. So there's a lot of information here, but since this plan has been put into place, there's been other plans as well that have looked at some of these areas in a little bit more detail and it's provided a little bit more insight. You can see there's some inset maps. You're going to see those momentarily. And then finally, looking out to the east, Route 92 is the primary corridor, but you can see Cedar Bay Road, Minoa Road, Route 257, Kinney Road are some of the main ones that are identified as bikeways, tying into some existing bike infrastructure along Genesee Street, through the Meadowbrook Drive neighborhood and so forth. So I mentioned before there was some need to go through some what would be considered private roadways or private property. So this is up in Cicero. This is Route 11 over here. Hopefully you can see my mouse. Cognoy Road coming kind of through the Wegmans, down West Pine Grove Drive around Drivers Village and connecting back into South Bay. So this was looked at and explored. We reached out to some of these entities, and there was, at least at that time, there wasn't a reason not to include this as an idea within the plan for worthy of future consideration. Again, looking closely, Route 11, Mattydale over by Northern Lights. You have the Bear Trap Creek Trail that comes out behind the Kmart Plaza. Just some high level, what side of the road to put bikeways on were considered at this high level. Again, the much more detailed plans were done for the Mattydale mobility study that was done 2 years back. It's into much more detail in this, but it's consistent with the overall principles as this same side of road, same types of facilities and so on. Showing it graphically in maps is certainly one way of communicating the information quickly and succinctly, but we also, instead of having a 10,000 page report, this report's only 24 pages. So it's pretty concise overall, but one way of also summarizing things is just put it in a simple table alphabetically. If you're a community and, the city of Syracuse, you own Avery Avenue, Come check out the report real quick, take a look at the table. If you're doing a project on Avery Avenue, oh, yep, okay, so something's going on. Let's check out map 19. Let's take a quick look at what the recommendations are for that roadway. So if they get around to repaving it, again, just another quick way to check it out and understand things. So there's a table for all 77 roads, summary table. Again, 100-mile network, 15 different road owners. The study is available online. Again, I included the link in the our box of dialogue over there that has all of our words in it. Feel free to click on that link and review this some more. Anytime we have a project, just be aware within SMTC, there's a publications tab within our website. You click on publications, you'll see there's a vast amount of studies and plans that we do. We always categorize them by the year that they're completed. So this was done back in 2013. So you got to scroll down, but the link that I sent to you is a direct link to the study. So then lastly, the next steps, I mentioned this is what I anticipate the first of a few discussions with the folk members. I feel this is a great forum to have the munis, the member agencies, everybody together in one room to kind of talk about what the concerns are, what opportunities they see, and so forth. So as far as future folk meetings, I would love to reconvene with you guys and hopefully get a few more communities at the table as well. And I'd like to, at the next meeting, perhaps maybe talk about what has been built, what is currently being considered as part of current capital program improvements, whether it's at the county, city, or at our transportation improvement program level. I'd like to talk about some of the synergies that Andrew had mentioned earlier with his LEOP effort. There's certain corridors that he's going to be studying that overlap directly the corridors that we've identified, connecting in with the Erie Canalway Trail. So there's a lot of synergy there, and there might be opportunities to advance some of those quickly. So I think we could talk about those types of things at our next meeting. Perhaps even talk about some high level different approaches for implementation. Again, we could consider at this point, everything's on the table for discussion, high level, okay, let's just propose one ginormous capital improvement project all at once to build all this out and put it on the SMTC tip, so to speak. And, it's going to be $52.2 million, whatever it is. That could be certainly one way to address this, but there's other ways to make this happen. And maybe we do it specific by corridor. We get the various communities that exist along an overall corridor to work together. Maybe it's proposed through one entity, whether it's the state or the county or whomever, and then everybody works together one way or another. So we'll talk about different approaches, see what works best for everyone, again, just to advance this. And certainly funding is going to be a topic of discussion too. Again, how do you pay for all this? What's that? So we're going to be looking at funding streams and sources that we'll discuss more at future meetings as well. So with that, I think that's everything. Here's my contact information if you want to take a quick screenshot of that. I'm available anytime I'm here at the office, be very happy to chat about ideas or concerns, questions that you might have. And again, I know I've been talking for about a half an hour. I thank you for your time and your attention, and I look forward to working with you. I think this will be exciting to figure out ways to, enhance the roads for all road users, not just the cars, but the bicyclists, the buses, walkers, improve mobility, improve quality of life, improve value for everyone. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Let's brings back some memories.
Oh yeah, and if anybody wants an autographed copy, this is actually our one and only.
I forgot about that.
Kroll. She is featured on the cover, so we will be selling autographed copies.
It's just a couple of years ago. While you were talking, Mike, we did get a question from Mr. Oli, Rob Oli, and I'll just read it to you. I don't know if you can see it there, but since 2013, there has been more e-bikes introduced on the roads and corridors than ever before. Has there been any updates to the study to accommodate for this recent influx?
I think that is an awesome question and something that we will look at as a lens. We're just starting off this process. So this is something that, again, I think it's a good lens to look through, given the fact that this is another paradigm shift with what has occurred since 2013. How is this being handled? Again, the city of Syracuse is where the vast majority of these, these scooters and so forth are being used, and e-bikes are being used, the vast majority. The city's got its own efforts to address some of those, I'm sure. So that's something that we could coordinate on, but looking beyond the city of Syracuse and elsewhere to make sure that this is handled appropriately. I think it's a very fair question and very fair lens to look at things through. That being said, I do not anticipate re-evaluating the entire network. As I mentioned, I think in looking through the process after we've dusted this plan off, we feel that the vast majority of the corridors are still very relevant. But thinking through maybe the types of facilities, instead of maybe a 5-foot wide bike lane, maybe we propose something a little bit more robust to accommodate some of these newer vehicles that are on the roads. So hopefully that answers the question. And I see hey John, I see your comment about Sherrills. Sherrills are bogus and less safe than nothing. Agreed. So there's issues there with Sherrills in some cases. Again, we did a very detailed screening of when you put a Sherrill on a road, the roadway has to meet a bunch of criteria. The traffic volumes and the speeds have to be well within certain thresholds for it even to be considered. Again, we went and did our due diligence at that time. I think that's a very fair statement. A lot of people don't like the Sherrills. They prefer the bike lanes, and of course, everybody prefers separated bike lanes or trails whenever possible. But again, with the intent of this, what's the low-hanging fruit? Not all of the roads that we identified at that time had wide enough shoulders to suggest that it becomes converted over to bike lanes. Where that becomes problematic is that with a lot of the road owners, if the road is only paved so wide, there's the question of if you have to widen it, does that mean you have to take more right of way and acquire land from private property owners? So at this high level study, that was something that was not, we didn't do survey site work for all 100+ miles of roadways. So it's impossible to know what roads, if you had to widen them, would be affecting private property ownership. So the thought at that time was utilize the Sherrills in the short term if the road meets all those safety thresholds that are spelled out. So
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Yeah, another thing that we've run into with Sherrills too, they work really well in like a kind of a greenway type of situation where your traffic's already really fairly slow. They bring more, like Frank posted in here, another form of signage and awareness in general. So yeah, like you were saying, Mike, it just depends on where you're going to use those and where it makes the most sense. Do we have any other questions? We can either, let's see here here we go. I don't know, any of us can really take this. What can residents do to get bike lanes and safer bike infrastructure pushed forward? So I'll start. One of the things that, as far as SMTC goes, we don't own any roads. We need to make sure we're going to the right folks to ask for the appropriate type of infrastructure. So your road owners are your city of Syracuse, your village, your towns. They own the local roads. Onondaga County owns county roads and their state roads. So that's one thing we need to do is work with our whatever the appropriate road owner is for the stretch of road that you're on. That's first thing. Mike, do you want to add anything else, or Tom or Mario or anybody? Please feel free.
One quick comment I can add is that, again, this is a high level regional network. So it's like the first layer of the onion, so to speak. And as you drill down further, often some of this stuff could result in the need for doing a corridor study similar to what we've done for Route 11. We've done several different detailed corridor studies for sections of Route 11. starting in the north, Cicero, and then moving down into Mattydale, and then most recently down into Nedrow. Within those, you get into much more fine-tuning levels of detail with the types of bikeways, facilities, where things are. It gives you the opportunity to really consider more of the right-of-way, what does exist for space, what you can do. So whenever we do our plans, that's when we drill down further to that level. And I anticipate, there'll certainly be more and more corridor studies that we're doing. We've got some on the books right now that are looking at things, Route 49 up in Oswego and certainly elsewhere throughout our planning area. So that's certainly one way for the residents to be involved in voicing a need for a particular type of bikeway, whatever that bikeway design be. So that's my input.
Yeah, I was going to add on, when we are doing those corridor studies, and when your municipality might be doing their own studies, make sure you go to any of those public events or participate in public surveys to make sure your voice is recorded on that. Because one thing that we always value within our studies is hearing from the community. If that's something that there's a strong desire for, the more people we hear that from, the more the municipality will hear it too. Because they'll see those survey results, they'll see the summary of the public meetings. So that will help for our own work to try and promote that within our own studies.
Almost forgot to unmute myself here. Do we have any other questions specific to Mike's presentation or otherwise? There's a raise your hand function somewhere in Zoom here, or if you want to type it into the chat, or if you want to put your camera on, you can physically raise your hand and we can ask you to unmute if you've got anything you want to ask or say. We've also got some of our member agencies here. If there's anyone that has questions for them, or if any of our member agencies have questions, or if there's anything that any other SMTC folks want to mention. Trying to see if I've got anything else. Don't think I do. I don't think I have anything else, but I also don't want to cut this short either.
I see about 5 or so municipalities. I mean, I took a quick jot down early on. I saw the town of Camillus was in the room, Village of Camillus, town of Geddes, Village of Camillus, and City, NISDOT were all players there. So I guess one general question I would have is, there's interest throughout the community that we hear from of moving this effort forward. Talking to those who own the roads, are there hesitations? Are there concerns? Sometimes communities will, municipalities say, well, we're just concerned about liability, or we're concerned about just paying for it, or we view this as something great, we just don't know how to get started. So I just kind of mention this and open the floor up to see if there's any concerns or issues or anything, or perhaps just to chime in real quick and say, yeah, this is of interest, keep moving it forward. So is there anybody that would like to say anything along those lines? I see John's got his hand raised.
Yep, I think, did it work, John? Were you able to unmute?
Let me know. Did it?
Yep, we can hear you. Okay.
Loud and clear.
All right. I'm sorry, I joined a little bit late, so I missed the beginning of the meeting, but I had a couple questions when I registered. Did they get addressed?
Oh, that's a good question.
I don't believe, no, we didn't get to those yet.
Oh, you're gonna get to them. Okay, that's fine.
No. Why don't you go ahead right now and ask, because I don't have them right in front of me.
I can only remember one of them. One of them was,
Let me see if I can find.
is there anybody from the city on the call that can tell us where they are with Vision Zero?
Not today. We don't have anyone. We don't have Neil or Kevin here today, unfortunately.
And I can't remember what the other one was.
I'm going to look right now.
School zone speed limits, maybe, but I guess.
Oh, how many tickets have been issued for people parking in bike lanes? Yep.
That was it. And there's nobody from the city to answer that question either.
No.
Do these get forwarded to the municipalities?
I will, yeah, typically we'll send them like right before the meeting because we'll wait so that we're not sending them 20 emails with questions. But
Yeah.
I knew as of this morning they probably weren't going to be here. So I will forward it to them post meeting. Let's see. I'm just sorry, I'm looking to see if there's other questions we've got here. There's some comments we received safe corridors and well-maintained roads connecting neighborhoods with downtown and parks. Onondaga Lake Park, Green Lakes, Jamesville. As far as some of those, as far as Green Lakes goes, SMTC actually worked on a project with the villages of Fayetteville, Manlius, and Manoa a year ago. That's on the SMTC's website. You should take a look at that. And here, Mike might be able to speak a little bit to that, but some of this is part of that.
What was the question, Danielle? I'm sorry.
It's not really a question, it's a statement. So I apologize for reading again. It just says safe corridors and well-maintained roads connecting neighborhoods with downtown and parks. And then there's 3 examples: Onondaga Lake Park, Green Lakes, Jamesville. And the question that we pose when folks register is, do you have a specific bike or ped transportation concern that you would like to share prior to the meeting? So this is somebody that's looking for safe corridors, well-maintained roads connecting neighborhoods with downtown and parks. So that's right along with what we tend to do when we're working on our projects as we go through those anyway. Let's see. Oh, Kayla. Let's see. There we go. Go ahead, Kayla.
Hi.
Hi.
Following up on my question earlier about what residents can do, I appreciate the response. I live in the village of Fayetteville, so I did partake in those meetings last year and answered any survey that I could find related to pedestrian or bicycle infrastructure.
Okay.
And I know especially connecting Fayetteville and Manlius with either sidewalks or bike lane has come up on every study or every presentation that I've seen. And I'm wondering, and I've reached out to like my representatives and local, and what else can we do? Like if this is such a common theme and it's being spoken to across every study that's coming out, I'm sure there are probably others in other villages in a similar situation. I guess is there anything else that can be done, or
that's a tough one. That particular stretch of road, when we had actually worked on a study many years ago, 2007, and the big concern that we heard when we were working on the project is pretty much, I don't want a sidewalk in my front yard, which was, I'm just going to be blunt, because if you go back and look at the report, you'll see everything. New York State DOT owns that road, runs Route 257 between the 2 villages there, Manlius and Fayetteville. And there are several folks that in the time since 2007, more and more folks are talking about it. I feel like, I don't know if it's something you need to make sure if you could get like a group of folks that live there that go to the 2 villages, you go to the state and you say, this is what we want. We've been asking for this. Is there a way to make this happen?
Okay.
I don't know if anyone else on our staff has additional suggestions. We've been noting it and in any of the studies that we have done that folks want it. And we've got, we've had those surveys more recently that speak to people wanting some type of connection between those 2 villages in particular. It's a no-brainer in my mind. It's very, very walkable area. If there's some sidewalks or something.
I'm trying to remember where I saw it. It was one of the recent publications that SMTC put out. It might have been like the long-term plan. The town of Manlius is second highest after the city of Syracuse for commuters that reside and work in the same town. So I mean, it plays into the study that we were talking about today, maybe not directly, but it really is
Absolutely.
a no-brainer, and I would love to, if anybody has an idea later on in there, you're welcome to reach out to me. My email is my first name, period, last name @gmail.com. So
Okay.
thank you.
If in the meantime I come up with something else, I know the town of Manlius itself is very, very active, so it might need to start there and then
Thanks.
try to work with the two villages, but I wish I had more to suggest.
I don't know how clear it was on the maps that I was showing, because I know that I was going through things quickly. But some of the roadways that we're discussing are definitely highlighted within the bike
Yeah.
corridor study. So,
Yeah,
so it's
they
being
are.
revisited again. And again, the whole purpose of this is to figure out implementation, of how to make, let's just say, the whole network work, but wherever we can make portions of the network work. So it's kind of back on the radar screen again, but through a different lens. I think there's, I'm considering it like, okay, yes, it's been studied here back in 2013, 2007, as Danielle mentioned. We've done some other plans for that area, and there might be even other at the town village level within their comp plans that might have addressed some of this stuff. So I think there's a lot of support behind it whenever that's documented in many places. I think that's very helpful.
Yeah, that
in
helps
showing
for sure.
that political side of things. So I guess the only thing I can say right now is it's being looked at as part of this effort right now. So continue to come to the folk meetings, continue to feel free to chime in, just say in the chat box, I support bike lanes on such and such a road or something like that. We'll document that. I've got one of the project planners that are on here, Kevin, is taking notes for us. So if people are feeling very strongly like, oh yeah, well, it says in the plan right here, Manoa Road is bike lanes, but since then, the road's been narrowed, there's been a road diet, and there's a lot of space for a shared use path or something. The community's been saying they want a shared use path along it. Point that kind of stuff out, or if you have your own feelings about it, certainly feel free to chime in, because we are collecting notes from this discussion as well.
Thanks.
Yeah, and actually, oh, go ahead. What?
Sorry, last comment. Providing that connection from Manlius to Fayetteville and connecting it through one of the entrances to the Empire State Trail, so like the Canal Landing Park in Fayetteville,
Yeah.
would go a long way to connecting
Yes.
Manlius to the greater grid. So
Yes.
thank you very much.
I'll send you a link to that study that we finished up last year too, because that's all things that were looked at. Actually, we've done a few studies in Manlius area, and then actually Mario just posted that in the chat there, but I'll still send it. And then Mr. Oli mentioned, what about Ashero? I can't remember the exact speed limit and the traffic volume along 257, but I don't believe it lends itself to Ashero being safe there. I could be misspeaking, so don't quote me on that, but it may not. Oh, it's 40 miles an hour. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, Cheryl would not be appropriate along 257 at all. Actually, I believe some of 257 already has some signs, or did at one point or some point say share the road, and there's bike signs. So Cheryl is not an appropriate treatment for a road. It's got to be 30 miles an hour or less for that. So.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh.
Go ahead, Rob.
So when you had the meetings in the village, there is that Ledyard Canal Trail, which does go from Manlius. It does bypass the 257, and it will link up to the Erie Canal Trail.
Yes.
It goes along the Ledyard Canal, where you would have to have a crosswalk on 92, which is probably the biggest problem. But I would say, Kayla, that you'd want to get keep a hold of, in touch with your town, and find out when that road 257 is going to get paved, and see if you can time it right and have it paved a little bit, further out. And at least it will be paved. In order to get it painted, like green or something like that, that is like the definition of a sharrow? Is it?
No, that Sharrow is just basically, wonder if we can find a quick picture here. A Sharrow is a it's basically just an arrow with a bike painted onto essentially the middle of a lane. A bike lane, like the ones you see in downtown Syracuse that are painted green, that's a bike lane.
Gotcha.
So that's the difference between the two.
The other thing, you know,
it
get the
is,
speed limit lowered, but you would get lots.
yeah,
of
New York State
that.
DOT, that would be something you'd have to work on with New York State DOT. As far as what type of road, what classification the road is, I don't know off the top of my head. I just don't remember that. Rob, so are the municipalities pursuing the Ledyard Canal Trail again? Is that what's happening, or?
No, I mean, I am kind of working with the county Greenway Blueway to
Okay,
get, one, to get it at least connected. It has to go around the Onondaga County water treatment plant,
okay,
or a water plant that has to go around there.
okay,
Once that's done, then it's almost connected from Mill Run Park to 92. Almost.
yeah. Yeah, I know. So
It's
many years ago, they actually many years ago, I think it was the village received money to received way back then the transportation bill was called ICE-T. They received money to actually put that trail in. And then for many, it didn't happen. There was some public outcry. It was it was not in my backyard instead of the front yard. So it's just, it's been a thing, but you gotta just keep pressing on. It sounds like people are more open to it now, so.
Yeah, neighbors change.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Mike, did you have anything else I want to make sure you,
No, I just want to, I mean, again, I want to keep this as an open invitation for everyone. I hope that there's interest in helping advance some implementation of the network. Depending on who shows up, going forward and what type of level of interest, if we can put things in place to have some of these discussions of what the concerns are, I certainly invite people to, participate, in whatever capacity they're comfortable doing so, whether it's through this forum or if they just want to call me informally and say, hey, I work for the town of so-and-so and our concerns are X, Y, and Z, or what we like, what we don't like, are these things. It's helpful for us to know.
yeah, absolutely. Looking to see. We got just like 5 more minutes. Does anyone have any last minute burning questions or comments or thoughts? We pride ourselves in keeping these minutes to 5 p.m. So I'm going to try to do that again. I'll do that. We'll be able to do that again today. So I don't see any so far. If anyone comes up with anything, they can message any of us. Mike, I'm going to put your email in I'll put your email in here just so so folks have it. Otherwise, I think we're done, and we appreciate your time. Kayla, I'll try to send a couple of things your way this week that I'm thinking about here to help you out. And if anyone has any comments or thoughts on the bike commuter corridor study and how we move forward, that would be really great. Of course, we'd love to hear from you. And I think that's it. Unless I don't see any last minute questions. Thanks everyone for your time today, and hope you can get out and enjoy the rest of this absolutely beautiful day.